Good day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Just Fish Outdoors. I'm your host, Dale York, and I designed Just Fish Outdoors to focus on freshwater lakes and streams and to provide information, tips, and techniques, along with how-to segments for catching everything from crappie to catfish. We will also provide tips on equipment, tackle, boating, and much, much more. All of this is aimed at helping you catch more fish and have fun doing it. So join us each week as we talk about my favorite subject, fishing.
And that would bring us to our special segment. You know, folks, it's getting close to that special time of year. You know, there's an annual event that fishermen look forward to. And this annual event traditionally marks the beginning of spring season. And it draws fishermen kind of out of their winter slumber. And this is known as the annual spring Sandbass run. If you can get around these fish, you can really catch a boatload of them. You know, this annual event is much anticipated and enjoyed. As water temperatures warm into the mid to high 40s, these fish will start their annual migration from the deep water basins of our area lakes into the shallower rivers and streams that feed these lakes. The first movement of these fish start with moving to the deeper pockets of the rivers and streams in the 40s to low 50s. Then as water temperatures increase, these fish continue moving up the tributaries and start spawning when water temperatures are in the high 50s, mid 50s, somewhere in that range. In this particular area of the state, the Northeast, that sandbass run is usually in full swing by late March or early April. What we're going to talk about today is some of our favorite spots to go find these critters and exactly how we track them, how we find them, and what we do to catch them. One of the areas, the first area that comes to mind is the Highway 412 Shodo Bend area on Grand River below Hudson there. That stretch of river is located about, 3 or 4 miles east of Shodo on Highway 12. That stretch of river from Shodo Bend area downstream will be the most productive early in the season, while the area above the Highway 412 bridge will be the most productive when the spawn is in full swing or as these fish come out of those deeper pockets below 412 and start moving up above 412 to actually spawn. Of course, there's a boat launch fee paid there at the park office, and the level and current in the river is determined by the release of water from the Hudson Lake Dam. So, that's not very far from Tulsa. We're only talking about 35-plus miles. The fish in that river, depending on exactly what the water temperature is, the release of the water, how much water is flowing down the stream, will dictate the area in that river that those fish are currently holding. Like I said earlier, the first or the beginning stages of that migration will be in the holding deeper pools below Highway 412 bridge. You may catch those fish 20 foot plus down there in those deeper pockets, late February, early March, even into mid-March. Just kind of depends on what the water temperature is and how much water they're releasing. Then as that water temperature continues to climb, what those fish will do is they'll start their migration up, and they'll go up into the 412, up above 412 bridge, all the way into the low water dam there. There's several places that they can hang out depending on how much water they're running and what the water temperature is there. Brian, what do you think about the water temperature as far as where those fish are? Don't you see what we see, 40s, 50s, something like that?
Oh, yeah. Water temperature mid to upper 40s, those fish are going to be down there. They'll stage in those holes down there below 412 bridge. And like you said, those fish will be 20, 22, 24 foot. Folks, those fish, when they stage up down there, they get in fair-sized schools. You get out there, you find them with electronics. Depending on water flow, if they're not running a whole lot of water, pretty easy to, once you locate those fish, to stay on top of them.
Yeah, and, that's another good point. You really need to use your electronics effectively when those fish are in that deeper pockets down there. Your great Lowrance HDS equipment will find those fish in a pretty good size area. And once you do find those fish, like Brian said, depending on how much water they're running, you can stay on them pretty easy by just putting a GPS marker on your Lowrance unit, or just looking at the bank and see approximately where you are with a tree stump, rock, or something else up on the bank. And if you can stay on top of those fish, you can catch a bunch of fish fairly easy. What I like to do in a situation like that is I like to throw a 1/8 ounce head, 1/4 ounce head, throw about 1.5 inch, 2 inch, 2.5 inch, some kind of skirt body and chartreuse or white. I fish it on 6 or 4 pound test line with a 6.5 foot spinning rod. And folks, the thing you really got to be careful of is the bite is not very noticeable. The bite can be very, very light. It can be just a little tick on the end of your line, and that's all you got. When you're fishing that deep and the water's that cold, they won't rattle your rod tip when they eat that thing. You see that too, Brian?
Oh, yeah. It's the strike you get down there like that in that deeper water down there, folks, the closest way I can describe it, it'll be a lot like a crappie strike. Those fish you'll have a light tick. Sometimes you'll just get a sensation on your rod tip of a little bit of weight or no weight. Dale likes to fish the 1/8 ounce, 1/4 ounce stuff. What I normally do is I'll go down to a 1/16 and I'll put a split shot up above it. And I'll fish it on 4 pound line. I'll fish a little bit smaller bait.
And folks, believe it or not, these fish can get size selective when that water's that cold. Sandbass are equated with biting anything and any time if you can get them around them. But that's not always the case, and we'll point out some instances here that you need to kind of be careful of maybe getting your bait too big or fishing it too fast, or that has a lot to do with how that jig falls. And what we're doing, folks, we're actually bouncing that jig up and down off bottom. We are actually putting the jig on the bottom of the lake or on the river and hopping that thing up about 1 foot or 2, and then, of course, they're hitting it on the fall when it falls back. So you have to really pay attention to what's going on. You need good rod, you need good line, and, don't let that thing fall on a slack line or you'll never feel that fish hit it. How much water they're running also plays a big important role in this. The more water they're running, the more those fish will belly out of the middle of the river and start getting closer to the bank. Looking for the little eddy pockets behind brush piles, behind rocks, behind wing dams, anything that will afford them a little bit of cushion out of that current. They'll do that as they run more water out of Hudson and that current gets swifter. So, pay attention to where those fish that you're catching are located and that are holding. And, the water speed or how much water they're running down that river can change at any time. So, sometimes you have varying conditions to which you're trying to catch these fish, and these fish will pinpoint themselves in relationship to those conditions. So you may be catching fish like crazy, and all of a sudden you don't get a bite, and you'll look around, and they may be running more water, or the current may be slower, and the fish are still there. They just moved somewhere, so you got to go find them again. They didn't go very far. They just moved somewhere fairly close. So pay attention to how fast the current is, how deep you're catching the fish. And I guarantee you, like I said, those fish will ball up in those 20-foot-plus pockets down there. And if you can get on top of them, stay on top of them, you can start catching them early in the year and just follow them right on up the river. You can catch fish down there for a solid month if you'll get down there and start early enough and just follow them up the river. The other thing that we'll talk about, the other place we'll talk about, is we're going to talk a little bit about Horseshoe Bend. Now, that's on the upper end of Tenkiller. That's where the upper Illinois dumps into Tenkiller Lake. And, a couple of things you need to be aware of there is you need to call and make sure you know how much water is coming down the Illinois River. If they've had a huge rain or something like that, it can easily flood that access down there. It's called Horseshoe Bend. So you need to know what's going on there. The other thing you need to be aware of is that boat ramp. Be a little cautious when you're launching your boat on that public access ramp there. It can be a little treacherous. It's a little narrow for some of these big, fat Rangers we're pulling around these days, so you got to be careful. You definitely don't want to run that thing off the side of the boat ramp. Then you got a major hiccup then. Another thing to think about here, and this is very common anywhere you find sand bass or you're looking for sand bass or you're catching sand bass in fairly clear water. The upper end of the Illinois River can get pretty clear that early in the year. I guarantee you, folks, one of the things that can be critical down there, especially if you're fishing that first half a mile above the boat ramp, quarter to half a mile, is jig color. Folks, you may not believe this, but I guarantee you, my brother and I have fished that river for many, many, many years on sand bass. When you get a lot of boat traffic on very, very clear water, the fish catching can go down in a hurry. So one of the tricks we use, once again, is we'll downsize our baits. We'll actually throw an inch and a half, inch and 3/4 long tube jig, and we'll throw it on a 16th ounce head, and we're doing the same thing, 4-pound line. And we're bouncing that thing off the bottom of the creek channel down there. What we're throwing is very specific. We're actually throwing a tube body that is clear. The plastic on it is clear, but it has silver metal flake in it. And those aren't easy to find all the time. But I guarantee you, folks, that color right there will make the difference when you get into a high sunlight condition. A lot of boats on the river, and that thing will catch fish when maybe nobody else is catching fish. That is the deadliest color when you start fishing that clear water, don't you think, Brian?
Oh, definitely. It resembles so many things, and then again, it doesn't. It's a non-intrusive bait. A lot of your bait colors that are out there, like your chartreuses and reds and oranges and bright pearl whites and stuff like that, you get a lot of boat traffic, you get real clear water. A lot of times, those brighter colors, those fish will actually shy away from them. You put something down there that they really can't make out, that they have to get up on to see, and it doesn't offend them in any way. And you work it slow, work it methodical, and they will suck it up.
Yeah, there's been days down there, folks, that we've done field testing for some of this stuff. And, you wouldn't think sand bass would be that picky, but I guarantee you there's days down there when we'll throw 6, 8, 10, 12 colors at an area that we know fish are there, and we may catch 5 or 10% of the fish that we're catching on that clear body on any other color we're throwing. Folks, I guarantee you it will make a difference when you get into that heavy boat traffic. Another thing and another place that it will make a big difference, we talked about the Grand River down there at Shodo, down there at Highway 412. There's a creek that runs into that thing that is extremely clear once again, and it's called Spring Creek. That is the same situation. When you get up in that creek, or the sand bass run up in that creek, and you get up there after them, many, many times you can put on that clear metal flake, and you'll catch fish when nobody else is catching fish. I mean, nobody's getting a bite, but you will catch fish on that clear metal flake. Once again, same thing. We fish that thing on the bottom, folks, and that's one of the keys. We don't throw it out there and reel it back. We throw it out there, let it hit the bottom. We lift our rod tip about a foot, 1.5 feet, and hold it there and let that jig fall back to the bottom. And that's 99% of your bites. That's when it's going to occur, is when that jig is falling back to the bottom.
I guarantee you there's going to be times, folks, when you're fishing that real clear water. If you got them, you're catching fish. If you don't have them, you're a spectator.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen this so many times in other places that we're catching other species of fish. That clear metal flake, silver metal flake body will produce fish when nothing else that you're throwing will produce fish. And it's as much as the technique as it is the color. It's a 50-50 deal. You throw that clear metal flake out there, let it sink 3 or 4 foot and start winding it in, you're not going to catch near the fish that you're going to catch bouncing that thing off bottom. And it works the same way, like we talked about earlier up at Shoto at Grand River. 99% of the fish we catch out of that river when we're up there sandbass fishing is bouncing that thing off bottom. That's the technique we're using. Every year we have people trolling motor over to my boat and, basically ask us how in the world are we catching all these fish. And it's no big secret. It's the technique. In Grand River, the color is not as important as the technique. You can catch them on a lot of different colors because the water has much more stain or much more color to it. But when you get into those real clear water situations like I talked about at Horseshoe Bend or down there at Spring Creek, you really ought to look at having some of these in your tackle box, because many times it can be the difference between you going home with a mess of fish for dinner and you stopping by Kentucky Fried Chicken on the way home.
Wind up paying twice for a fishing trip.
Exactly. Wind up stopping at McDonald's on the way home because you don't have anything in the live well. So pay attention to these things, and even if you see us, we'll be down there this spring. I guarantee you, we'll be down there chasing them for a few times, probably on Horseshoe Bend and on Grand River. And if you see us, feel free to come by and talk to us. We'll share any information we have with you and what's going on, what's happening around the area. And, I can almost bet you that we'll be catching some fish down in there as well. We've got a few years' experience doing this. So don't hesitate to, downsize your bait somewhat sometimes, because, folks, when all that boat traffic gets on the river, it'll put those fish down. You've seen the boat traffic. For those of us who have experienced this phenomena of the early spring sandbass fishing, both in Horseshoe Bend and in Grand River, the amount of boat traffic is just awesome. I mean, it looks like, a Florida boat show down there all day long.
It's pretty bad.
You can almost walk from one side to the other on fiberglass, And when that happens, those fish are still there, and they will still bite, but their heads are down. They're down on the bottom, hugging that bottom. They're not up mid-column. They're not up high. Now, what will happen is as they run more and more water, or as the current gets stronger, like I said, those fish will belly out of the middle part of that river, and they'll start getting closer to the banks. So, you may have to alter your specific location where you're casting to, but I guarantee you, man, you can still catch those fish. They're still there. They've just moved a little bit, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, presentation and everything is still the same. You're still keeping that bait right there on the bottom of the river or bottom of the creek. But those fish, like he said, they'll move out of the center, get away from the current. They'll move toward the banks, get in eddy pockets, get behind boulders, lay downs, whatever. You run across a situation like this, you need to take a little time, and fish it pretty thoroughly, because as a general rule, if those fish are in the river, when you have eddy pockets like that, there's going to be at least a few fish in there.
That's something to keep in the back of your mind. As that current gets stronger in the river, regardless of what body of water you're fishing, if that current gets stronger, it just moves those fish closer to the bank. They're looking for those eddy pockets or places they can get out of that current and rest and still feed. So, like I said, when you're fishing in these rivers, especially on our hydroelectric situations where the water can change dramatically, you need to, kind of be aware of that. And not only as a safety precaution, but also what the fish do, how they react to those changing conditions, and they can change in just a matter of minutes. So, if you need any additional information, if you want some more information, feel free to drop me an email. We'll try to help you any way we can. We're all about helping anybody that wants to learn how to do this. So, try some of those techniques next time you're out, and you'll catch some.
Folks, I want to remind you, you go down to Grand River this spring sandbass fishing, especially later on in the spring during the month of April. I want to remind you that you will undoubtedly probably catch a few crappie when you're down there sandbass fishing. I want to remind you that is still 10-inch length water.
Yeah.
The river is 10-inch length water, so keep those crappie if they're over 10 inches, but, make sure how long they are before you stick them in the live well, because, you don't need to have that kind of day, if you know what I mean.
No, you don't need a financial reminder that fish is too short. Brian, thanks for coming on the show today, and I hope we've helped some folks get ready for a great spring sandbass run. Folks, send an email, tell us how you like the show or how we can improve on it, or if you have a suggestion on a topic, let us know, and we'll try to put a show together that'll help you out. If you would like to know more about Just Fish Outdoors or anything we can help with, just drop us a line, justfishoutdoors@justfish.com. Folks, get out and enjoy one of the many lakes or streams we're blessed to have. Thanks for listening, and be sure to catch us next week at the same time. This is Dale York, host of Just Fish Outdoors, saying we'll catch you later.